Mom, I have a fever. Can I stay home from school today? The girl said. Her mother touched her forehead and allowed her to stay. Around noon, the girl heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. Quietly peeking out of her room, she saw her aunt come in and secretly slip something into the pocket of her mother's coat. Before leaving, the aunt spoke on the phone and said, "I took care of everything. You can call the police tonight. That fool won't suspect a thing." Before we continue, don't forget to write in the comments which country you're from and how old you are. Enjoy listening. Emily Harper had always believed that the world was divided into two kinds of people, those who followed the rules and those who rewrote them. At 12 years old, she firmly placed herself in the second category, though her rebellions were small, sneaking an extra cookie, staying up 15 minutes past bedtime, perfecting the art of the fake fever. This particular Tuesday in late October, the air outside carried the crisp bite of autumn, leaves skittering across the driveway like nervous whispers. Emily lay in bed, her quilt pulled up to her chin, cheeks artfully flushed with a touch of her mother's coral blush she'd borrowed from the bathroom counter. She'd spent the previous night rehearsing, a slight rasp in her voice, a dramatic cough timed for maximum effect, and the heating pad tucked beneath her pillow to warm the sheets, just enough to fool a mother's hand. "Mom," she croaked, letting her voice crack on the second syllable. "I have a fever. Can I stay home from school today?" Sarah Harper paused in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the hallway light. She was already dressed for the day, navy blazer, cream blouse, sensible black pumps that clicked with authority on the hardwood. In one hand, she held a steaming mug of coffee. In the other, her car keys jingled like a warning bell. Sarah was 42, a mid-level accountant at a firm downtown, with dreams of one day owning her own practice. She had a reputation for being meticulous, organized, and, above all, fair, which made Emily's deception feel like a tiny betrayal, but one she was willing to risk for 8 uninterrupted hours of freedom. Sarah crossed the room in 3 quick strides, her brow furrowed with practiced concern. She pressed the back of her hand to Emily's forehead, then her cheek, then the side of her neck. Emily held her breath, counting silently. 1, Mississippi. 2, Mississippi. "You do feel warm," Sarah murmured, her voice laced with worry. "Let me get the thermometer." Emily's heart skipped a beat. The digital thermometer was unforgiving, a traitor in plastic casing. As Sarah turned toward the bathroom, Emily snatched the heating pad from under her pillow and pressed it to her neck, willing the warmth to radiate. She closed her eyes, feigning exhaustion, and prayed. Sarah returned with the thermometer and popped it under Emily's tongue. The seconds stretched like taffy in summer heat. Emily focused on breathing through her nose, slow and steady, her pulse a frantic drumline in her ears. The device beeped. 99.8, Sarah read, her frown deepening. "Not dangerous, but enough to keep you home. I'll call the school and let them know." Relief flooded Emily like warm syrup, sweet and sticky. "Thanks, Mom," she whispered, letting her voice waver just enough to sell the performance. Sarah smoothed Emily's hair back from her forehead, a gesture so tender it almost made Emily feel guilty. Almost. There's chicken soup in the fridge. Heat it up if you feel up to it. And text me if you need anything, okay? I'll try to be home by 5, but I have a client meeting that might run late. Emily nodded, burrowing deeper into her pillows. I'll be fine. Sarah lingered for a moment, her hand resting on Emily's shoulder. You know you can tell me if something's wrong, right? Not just physically. Emily's stomach twisted. She forced a weak smile. I know. Just a bug. Sarah hesitated, then leaned down to kiss the top of Emily's head. Love you, kiddo. Love you too. The front door clicked shut at 7:42 a.m. Emily waited until the sound of Sarah's sedan faded down the cul-de-sac, then counted to 100, her fingers drumming against the quilt. When she was absolutely certain the coast was clear, she sprang from bed like a jack-in-the-box, the heating pad tumbling to the floor with a soft thud. Freedom tasted like microwave popcorn and unrestricted Wi-Fi. She spent the first hour in pure, unadulterated bliss. She raided the kitchen, assembling a breakfast fit for a queen: frosted cereal, chocolate milk, and a side of leftover pizza from the night before. She built a pillow fort in the living room, complete with fairy lights stolen from her bedroom and a blanket canopy that draped like a tent. She queued up her favorite true crime documentary, the irony would hit her later, and danced around in mismatched socks, singing off-key to songs her mother would definitely not approve of. The house was hers, a kingdom of 8 glorious hours, and she intended to rule it with abandon. By 9:30 she had conquered the pillow fort and moved on to phase 2. Exploration. She tiptoed into her parents' bedroom, a place usually off limits without permission. Sarah's side of the bed was neat, the comforter smoothed with hospital corners. Dad's side, Mark Harper, currently in Chicago on a business trip, was a chaos of unfolded laundry and a half-read novel about espionage. Emily ran her fingers along the dresser, tracing the frame of a family photo from last summer. The 3 of them at the lake, sunburned and laughing. Sarah's arm around Emily's shoulders, Mark hoisting a fish like a trophy. She lingered on Sarah's jewelry box, a wooden carousel with a ballerina that spun to a tinny melody. Inside were the usual suspects: pearl earrings, a silver locket from Grandma, the sapphire ring Mark had given Sarah on their 10th anniversary. Nothing like the diamonds she would soon discover. By 10:30, the novelty had started to wear thin. The documentary ended with a cliffhanger about a missing heiress, and Emily found herself pacing the hallway, restless. She considered baking cookies, but remembered the smoke alarm's hair trigger sensitivity. Last time, she'd set it off with toast. She thought about calling her best friend Mia, but decided against it. Mia would demand details, and Emily wasn't ready to share her perfect crime. Not yet. At 11:57, she was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through videos of cats failing spectacularly at jumps when the sound stopped her cold. The unmistakable scrape of a key in the front door lock. Emily's popcorn bowl slipped from her fingers, kernels scattering across the rug like tiny white hailstones. Mom wasn't due back until 5. Dad was in Chicago until Friday. The only other person with a key was... She dove behind the couch, heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The door opened with a soft creak. Heels clicked on the hardwood, sharp, deliberate, expensive. Emily eased up just enough to peer over the couch's arm, her breath shallow. Aunt Lydia. Lydia Harper, 35, childless, and the family's resident black sheep, stood in the entryway like she owned the place. Her auburn hair was swept into an elegant chignon, her trench coat a shade darker than Sarah's, cinched at the waist with a belt that screamed designer. She carried no purse, no shopping bags, nothing that suggested a casual drop-by. In her gloved hand dangled a small velvet pouch, deep burgundy, the kind that screamed expensive and trouble. Lydia's eyes swept the room with the efficiency of a security camera, lingering on the pillow fort, the scattered popcorn, the faint glow of the TV. Emily shrank back, willing herself to disappear. Lydia's lips curled into a faint smirk, amusement or annoyance. Then she shook her head and crossed to the coat rack by the door. Emily's breath caught as Lydia's manicured fingers, nails painted a deep crimson, slipped into the pocket of Sarah's navy trench coat, the very one Sarah had worn out the door that morning. The pouch disappeared inside, the fabric settling back into place as if nothing had happened. Lydia smoothed the coat with a practiced motion, then pulled out her phone, pressing it to her ear. "I took care of everything," she whispered, her voice low and urgent. "You can call the police tonight. That fool won't suspect a thing." The call lasted 7 seconds. Lydia ended it, slipped the phone into her pocket, and was gone, the door locking behind her with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the silence. Emily stayed frozen behind the couch for a full minute, maybe 2, her mind racing in circles, trying to process what she'd just witnessed. Aunt Lydia, Mom's younger sister, the one who sent postcards from Paris and Tokyo, who breezed in every few months with stories of art openings and celebrity sightings, who always smelled of expensive perfume and unspoken judgments, had just planted something in Mom's coat, something meant for the police. She waited until the sound of Lydia's heels faded completely down the driveway, then crept to the coat rack on trembling legs. Her fingers shook as she reached into the pocket, the velvet pouch soft and heavy against her skin. She eased it open, her breath hitching. Inside lay a diamond necklace, the stones catching the hallway light like captured stars, each facet a tiny prism of accusation. And beneath it, a folded slip of paper, crisp and white. Emily unfolded it with hands that felt suddenly too small. Insurance claim filed. Policy pays double if theft reported from home. Split 60-40 after appraisal. Burn this. Her stomach dropped through the floor, through the foundation, into the earth itself. This wasn't a gift. This wasn't a surprise. This was evidence. Aunt Lydia was framing Mom for insurance fraud. Emily's first instinct was to call her mother, to scream into the phone until Sarah came home and fixed everything. But she stopped herself, her thumb hovering over the call button. Sarah would panic. She would confront Lydia, demand answers, and the plan would unravel like a poorly knit scarf. Lydia would deny everything, destroy the evidence, and Emily would be left with nothing but a story no one would believe. No, she needed proof. undeniable, ironclad proof that would stand up in a court of law, or at least in the court of family opinion. She photographed the necklace and note from every angle, the flash on her phone making the diamonds sparkle like accusations. She zoomed in on the clasp, LH18K, Lydia's initials, engraved in tiny, elegant script. Then she returned everything exactly as she'd found it, the pouch settling into the pocket like a sleeping snake, coiled and waiting. The afternoon stretched into a labyrinth of questions, each more twisted than the last. Why Mom? Lydia and Sarah had never been close. Lydia had always treated Sarah's suburban life like a personal failure, a betrayal of the artistic destiny their parents had supposedly intended for both daughters. Sarah had chosen stability, marriage, a mortgage, a daughter. Lydia had chosen freedom, galleries, travel, a life unbound by PTA meetings and soccer schedules. But this was betrayal on a criminal scale, a knife twisted in the back of the sister who had always opened her home, her fridge, her heart. Emily paced her room, her socked feet silent on the carpet, piecing together fragments like a detective in one of her documentaries. 2 months ago, Lydia had borrowed Sarah's spare key to water plants while the family was at Grandma's lake house for the weekend. Emily remembered the conversation. Lydia had swept in with a bottle of Prosecco and a story about a sculptor in Prague, then casually asked for the key. "Just in case the ficus needs a drink," she'd said with a wink. Sarah had handed it over without a second thought. Last week, Sarah had complained about the insurance company raising premiums after a string of burglaries in the neighborhood. It had been a casual remark over dinner, Sarah stirring pasta while Emily set the table. Lydia had been there, visiting for the weekend, sipping Chardonnay on the back patio. She'd laughed it off, her voice light, but her eyes sharp. "Better safe than sorry," she'd said. "Get the good policy, the one that covers scheduled jewelry. You never know." Scheduled jewelry. The necklace in the pouch had a tiny engraving on the clasp. LH18K. Lydia's initials. It wasn't Sarah's. It had never been Sarah's. It clicked like a puzzle piece sliding into place with a satisfying snap. Lydia was drowning. The art world was brutal. Galleries closing left and right like dominoes in a storm. Investors wanted returns, not promises. Creditors were circling. Sarah's insurance policy, meticulously updated every year, with a rider for double indemnity in case of theft from the residence, was the perfect mark. Plant the necklace, report a burglary, collect the payout, split the profits. Sarah would be the fool who lost her own jewelry, too embarrassed or confused to fight back. Emily's phone buzzed, jolting her from her thoughts. A text from Sarah. "Running late. Order pizza if you're hungry. Love you." Emily stared at the screen, her reflection ghostly in the glass. If the police came tonight, they'd find the necklace in Sarah's pocket. Sarah would be arrested, questioned, maybe even charged. The firm would fire her. Neighbors would whisper. Emily's life, school, friends, future, would collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. She had 6 hours. First, she needed to understand the scope. She opened Sarah's laptop. Password still Emily's birthday. 04/12/13, a fact that made her chest ache with a mix of love and guilt, and navigated to the family's insurance portal. The login was saved, another small mercy. The policy was there, all 47 pages of it, a dense forest of legalese. Emily skimmed, her eyes darting to the highlights. Rider Clause 14B, double payout for theft of scheduled items from the insured residence, provided a police report was filed within 24 hours and the item was recovered outside the home. The necklace was listed under scheduled personal property. 18K, white gold, 42 diamonds, 3.2 carats total, appraised value $48,000. Owner, Sarah Harper. Owner, Sarah Harper. But it wasn't. It couldn't be. Emily's breath hitched. $48,000. Double indemnity, $96,000. Split 60-40. Lydia would walk away with $57,600. Enough to save a failing gallery. Enough to destroy a family. She closed the laptop and paced again, her mind a whirlwind. She needed proof Lydia planted it. Proof the necklace belonged to Lydia. Proof of the accomplice on the other end of that call. And a way to flip the trap without Sarah ever knowing how close she'd come to disaster. At 3:15 p.m., she biked to the corner pharmacy, her allowance burning a hole in her pocket. The bell above the door jingled as she entered, the fluorescent lights harsh against her tired eyes. She navigated the aisles with purpose, past the cold medicine and bandages, to the electronics section. There, on a pegboard display, hung a tiny wireless camera, the kind advertised for nanny cams and pet monitoring. Battery life, 12 hours. Resolution, 1080p. Night vision. Motion detection. Price, $49.99. She had $53 in her piggy bank, saved from birthdays and chores. She paid at the counter, the cashier barely glancing up from his phone. Back home, she tore open the packaging with her teeth, her hands steady now with purpose. She slipped on Sarah's coat, too big, the sleeves swallowing her hands, and felt the pouch shift in the pocket. She left it there. Evidence had to stay put. Using a sewing kit from Sarah's junk drawer, she tucked the camera into the coat's inner lining, the lens angled toward the pocket like a watchful eye. She tested the feed on her phone, paired via Bluetooth. Crystal clear. The pouch sat innocently, diamonds winking. 4:02 p.m. Another text from Sarah. Home by 6:30. Love you. Emily's chest tightened. She opened the family cloud drive, created a hidden folder labeled Math Homework 7th Grade, and uploaded the photos of the necklace and note. She added a second layer of security, password protecting the folder with a phrase only she would know. Heating pad, hero. Time-stamped. Undeniable. Now the risky part. She called Lydia's gallery, closed on Mondays, voicemail only. Perfect. She left a message in a whisper that she hoped sounded menacing, her voice disguised with a scarf over the phone. Aunt Lydia, it's Emily. I saw what you did. Meet me at the house at 5, or I send everything to the police myself. She hung up, hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Bluffing was all she had. Lydia would either panic and remove the evidence, or double down and try to silence the witness. Either way, Emily would be ready. 4:47 p.m. The front door camera pinged. Motion detected. She'd set up the house's security system to notify her phone, a feature Sarah had installed after the neighborhood burglaries. Lydia's silver Audi idled at the curb, sleek and anonymous. Lydia stepped out, scanning the street like a fugitive, her trench coat flapping in the wind. She used her key, the lock turning with a familiar snick. Emily watched the live feed from her bedroom, volume off, door cracked just enough to hear footsteps. Lydia went straight to the coat rack, her movements economical. She reached into Sarah's pocket, her fingers brushing the pouch, and froze. The camera's tiny red light blinked faintly from the lining, a beacon in the dim hallway. Lydia's face drained of color, her eyes wide with panic. She yanked the camera free, the stitching tearing with a rip that echoed like a scream. She crushed it under her heel with a crunch that made Emily flinch, the plastic cracking like bones. Then she bolted, the pouch still in the pocket. She hadn't dared remove it with the camera watching. Emily's heart sank. Physical evidence gone. But the cloud backup was safe, and the crushed camera was now additional proof of tampering. She scrambled to collect the pieces, sealing them in a plastic bag labeled biohazard from the bathroom. Evidence. She grabbed her bike and raced after Lydia, staying 2 blocks back, her legs burning with effort. The wind whipped her hair, tears stinging her eyes from the cold. Lydia drove to a self-storage facility on the edge of town, the kind with orange roll-up doors and flickering security lights that buzzed like angry hornets. Emily slipped in behind a moving truck, her bike hidden behind a dumpster. She watched Lydia unlock Unit 217, the metal door rattling upward. Inside, chaos and desperation. Boxes of paintings stacked haphazardly, bubble-wrapped sculptures teetering like drunks, and a floor safe bolted to the concrete, its dial gleaming. Lydia opened it with a 4-digit code. Emily was too far to see the numbers, but she snapped photos through the chain-link gate, the zoom on her phone catching every detail. Lydia stuffed the velvet pouch inside, slammed the door, and spun the dial with shaking hands. Emily's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stay out of it, kid. You don't know what you're messing with. Last warning." Lydia's accomplice. The voice on the phone. Emily's blood ran cold, but she didn't respond. Instead, she saved the message, screenshot it, and added it to the cloud folder. 5:41 p.m. Lydia sped off, tires squealing. Emily followed at a distance, her bike chain rattling, until Lydia pulled into a coffee shop parking lot on the outskirts of town, a rundown place called Brood Awakening, with cracked pavement and a flickering neon sign. Lydia met a man in a cheap suit, nervous, sweaty, tie askew, his hair slicked back with too much gel. They argued in hushed tones near the dumpsters, the smell of burnt coffee and garbage hanging heavy in the air. Emily crept close enough to hear, hiding behind a minivan with a dented fender. She activated her phone's voice recorder, holding it low. "Girl knows," Lydia hissed, her voice cracking for the first time. "She left a message, threatened to go to the police." The man, Marcus, Emily would learn later, wiped his brow with a napkin, leaving a streak of foundation. "We can't move the claim. Appraisers booked solid until Thursday, and the policy needs a police report from the residents. Has to be tonight or we lose the window. The double indemnity clause expires at midnight." "Then we plant it again," Lydia snapped. "Different coat. Make it look like the husband fenced it. Mark's out of town. Perfect patsy. The wife will be too busy covering for him to notice the claim." Marcus hesitated, glancing around. "And the kid?" Lydia's laugh was bitter, sharp as broken glass. "She's 12. Who's going to believe her?" Emily's blood ran cold. They weren't done. They were escalating. Dad was next. She biked home, mind spinning like a hamster wheel on fire. She needed the police to catch Lydia in the act, without Sarah or Mark taking the fall. She needed Lydia to incriminate herself on camera, with the necklace in her possession, and a confession that tied it all together. 6:28 p.m. Sarah's car pulled into the driveway, the headlights sweeping across the lawn like searchlights. Emily met her at the door, hugging her tighter than usual, burying her face in her mother's blazer to hide the tears threatening to spill. Sarah smelled like coffee and printer ink and safety. "You okay, sweetie?" Sarah asked, pulling back to study Emily's face. "You look pale. Fever back?" "Just tired," Emily mumbled, her voice muffled. "Bad soup." Sarah laughed, the sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. "Well, let's order pizza. Pepperoni and extra cheese? Your favorite." Emily nodded, forcing a smile that felt like plastic. Over dinner, she watched Sarah like a hawk. Every bite of pizza, every sip of soda, every laugh at a silly story about a co-worker's cat. Sarah talked about her day, spreadsheets, a difficult client who kept changing numbers, the new coffee machine in the break room that made lattes with too much foam. Normal things, safe things, things that could be shattered with one phone call. After Sarah fell asleep on the couch, remote in hand, the TV flickering with a cooking show, Emily stayed up. She moved the crushed camera pieces to a plastic bag. Evidence. She checked the cloud folder. Still there, untouched. She set up her phone on a tripod in the hallway, angled toward the coat rack, recording in night vision. She hung Dad's old leather jacket beside Sarah's coat, the one he hadn't worn since his college reunion 3 years ago, the one that smelled faintly of cedar and forgotten dreams. She waited. At 11:03 p.m., the front door camera pinged again. Lydia, hood up, key in hand, her face pale in the green glow of night vision. Emily's heart leapt into her throat. She watched from the stairs, hidden behind the banister, her phone recording a second angle. Lydia crept in, her movements jerky, glancing around like a cornered animal. She went straight to the coat rack, bypassing Sarah's trench. Her fingers dove into Dad's leather jacket, sliding the pouch into the inner pocket with a whisper of velvet on leather. She whispered into her own device, a burner phone Emily hadn't seen before. It's in the husband's jacket now. Call it in at 7 a.m. They'll think he fenced it. The wife will be too busy covering for him to notice the claim. We're clear. She left, locking the door behind her with a soft click. Emily waited 10 minutes, her legs numb from crouching, then called the non-emergency police line, her voice steady despite the earthquake in her chest. My aunt just broke into our house, she whispered. She's trying to frame my parents for stealing a necklace. I have video. Please come quietly. My mom's asleep. 2 officers arrived within 15 minutes. Officer Ramirez and Officer Chen, both women, both calm and professional. Emily met them at the door in her pajamas, her hair tousled, the picture of a frightened child. She led them to the hallway, showed them the footage on her phone, the cloud photos, the storage unit pictures, the crushed camera in the bag, the text message from the unknown number. She explained everything, the insurance policy, the rider clause, the forged appraisal, Lydia's initials on the clasp. She showed them the ledger she'd found referenced in online reviews of Lydia's gallery, subtle mentions of creative accounting and discrepancies in valuation. Officer Ramirez made a call. Backup was dispatched to the storage facility in the coffee shop. At 6:57 a.m., Marcus Tate called in the theft from his burner phone, his voice shaking as he reported a break-in at the Harper residence. Police were already waiting at the coffee shop, having traced the number from Emily's screenshot. They arrested him mid-sentence, his coffee spilling across the table. Lydia was taken into custody at the gallery at 9:12 a.m., her chignon unraveling as officers read her rights. The safe in Unit 217 yielded the necklace, the original note, and a ledger of forged appraisals dating back 2 years. Dozens of pieces, lost or stolen, all insured, all claimed. Lydia's phone records showed calls to Tate, to an offshore account in the Caymans, to a lawyer who specialized in insurance fraud. The necklace was returned to its original owner, a wealthy collector in New York who'd reported it stolen from Lydia's gallery 6 months earlier, the theft conveniently timed with a cash flow crisis. Sarah never knew how close she'd come to handcuffs. The insurance company voided the policy but filed no charges against the family, citing lack of intent. The firm gave Sarah a week off with pay, calling it compassionate leave. Mark flew home early, bewildered but grateful, hugging Emily so tight she thought her ribs might crack. Emily went back to school the next day. No one believed she'd been sick. Her homeroom teacher, Mrs. Patel, raised an eyebrow at her perfect attendance record suddenly broken. Mia cornered her at lunch, eyes wide with suspicion. So what really happened yesterday? You look like you saw a ghost, or solved a murder. Emily smiled, popping a grape into her mouth, the juice sweet and tart. Just a fever. Went away fast. Some secrets, she decided, were better than any day off. And some heroes wore mismatched socks, carried heating pads, and saved their families one frame of video at a time.